Alrighty here. The Chinese Grand Prix is up on deck for the Formula One World Championship Series, and Australia is a blur now. It went by super quick. That weekend did. We saw Lando Norris getting the job done, coming home P1. Max Verstappen 0.8 of a second behind Norris in P2, P3. George Russell P4. This one right here is a big surprise for a lot of people, but not for me. I expected this to happen. Andrea Kimi Antonelli. A lot of people just call him Kimi Antonelli and the paddock, so we're just going to go with that here for the channel onwards. But he had a great day, started 16th, worked his way forward, and did have a lot of help. Let's just be real here, but he still outdid Lewis Hamilton and the Ferraris, and proved a lot of people wrong. And Alexander Albon P5 for the Williams. The race was chaotic. We saw a lot of DNFs, particularly from the rookies. The race was wet, dry, intermediate tires. But is that going to happen this weekend in Shanghai? I don't know. Time will tell. But today I am here to give y'all my full-on predictions for the race, and I'll also touch on the sprint at the end for a tad moment. But this video right here is not going to take too particularly long, so kick back and relax. Hopefully you enjoyed. But enough said here, and on to the intro we go. Winning the 2025 Chinese Grand Prix will be Lando Norris in the McLaren. Lando Norris is on fire right now, has won the last two Grand Prix dating back to last year, the season finale in Abu Dhabi. He took the checker flag in Australia, so he's going to make it 3 race wins in a row. Second place, Oscar Piastri had a heartbreaker in Melbourne, his home Grand Prix, when it was starting to dry up. Everybody was on dry tires and just staying in one particular line, and then rain came, and in one particular line the drivers were following suddenly got wet, and that's when we saw both McLarens get off track. Norris luckily escaped, but Piastri got stuck in the grass, got trapped a lap down. Luckily a safety car happened, and he actually scored a point, some points, if you will, with S at the end, not just one particular point, but he did end up salvaging a couple of points out of the failure at the end with the tire strategies. There you go there. Max Verstappen, third place. He's going to round out the podium. George Russell, P4, and Andrea Kimi Antonelli, P5. The Mercedes car is very underrated. And right now, they're sitting 27 and 27 with McLaren in the Constructors' battle. Obviously, right now, as a Mercedes fan, I got to soak it all in because this may be the closest we are to McLaren this entire year. So, got to enjoy it while you can. Let's just be real here. Righty P6, Charles Leclerc. Very disappointing weekend in Melbourne. I expected a lot more from him and Ferrari in general. Liam Lawson, 7th. 8th place, Lewis Hamilton. And 9th place, Carlos Sainz, who had a very unfortunate DNF under a safety car. He is definitely not going to have that happen again in Shanghai this weekend. I believe he bounces back and scores a couple of points. Alexander Albon, P10. 11th place, Isaac Hadjar. You feel really bad for the young kid. Was getting ready for his first F1 race. Qualified extremely well. The highest of all rookies. Formation lap. It's a wet one. Spins. Hits the wall. Coming off of turn number 1. Man, you just hate it for him. He gets out. The cameras are all on him. He's bawling his eyes out. Going into the paddock, he is met with, by Anthony Hamilton, Lewis Hamilton's father. He comforts him, talks to him, because he has seen it all. Him and Lewis have been through it all, from when Lewis was growing up racing to where he is now. A lot has happened, and he knows the advice, if you will, that needs to be said to some of these young drivers. And he talked to Isaac for a little while, I would say probably about 45 seconds to a minute, and then they went their own ways. And then after the race, you see Helmut Marko criticizing him about his little rain shower he cried up, and it's embarrassing, he said, which I can see both sides. Let's just be real here. They're professionals. But time and place for Marko. I don't know. Some of his comments are outlandish, if you will. So I guess Hadjar will bounce back this weekend for a P11, first place out of the points. And he will beat Yuki Tsunoda, his teammate, in P12. So ultimately, that's all that matters. Fernando Alonso, 13th, had a DNF in Melbourne, but I believe gravel played a big factor into him wrecking out of the race because Pierre Gasly hit the gravel and some of it came onto the track, and with a wet track, a little bit of paint on there for the layout or like the white lines and a little bit of gravel. All three of those things combined is a wreck waiting to happen, and that's what happened to Alonso. The safety car came out, and that's when all chaos unfolded. But there you go there, 13th, Lance Stroll 14th, Esteban Ocon 15th. Haas really messed up this past weekend. They had a chance there at the end to make something or nothing into something, if you will, because when we had a late safety car happen for Bortoleto and Liam Lawson, they had a chance to stay on their intermediate tires. They had a chance to, but instead they passed the safety car. They put on slicks, they lose their lap. They restart, another one happens, and it's just very unfortunate. If they would have stayed on those intermediate tires, yes, they were very worn out. They had a chance when that rain came to make a big jump ahead of the field. And I mean a big one. They could have gone very well from P1, they were in 15 and 16th to P1 and 2. Obviously, all the stuff happened afterwards. They would have still been passed by the quicker cars. But points were on the table ultimately. And I believe Haas as a whole just failed the strategy. If you would have stayed on those intermediate tires and caught back up to the field for the following restart, they would have gotten to P1 and P2. They would have been leading laps in the Australian Grand Prix. I think I'm getting the safety car window wrong, but I remember this happening though. They had a chance to really do some big things here this weekend, but they didn't. And shame that happened. But Ocon 15th, Gabriel Bortoleto 16th, and Nico Hulkenberg 17th. Jack Doohan 18th. He is the driver, I believe, that's going to have a DNF, or one of the three that will have one. Ollie Behrman and Pierre Gasly. I think Gasly and Behrman are going to have wrecks early on in the race from the opening lap. Doohan, second race DNF, I believe, will happen. If this were to actually happen, though, I just don't see how the Franco Colapinto rumors won't start then. Because 2 DNFs in a row after a sluggish testing out in Bahrain from him, he's on a short leash. There's no way you can convince me that they didn't just get Franco Colapinto without the intentions of putting him into a ride at some point this year. They spent way too much money to get him loaned from Williams. Williams wouldn't be doing that unless they knew Colapinto would get into the ride, because that right there is just wasting a talent, because they could have Colapinto as their reserve driver instead of Browning, which I believe is their actual reserve driver for Williams. And I just think with the amount of money Alpine is spending, he's going to be in the car at some point. Doohan's on a short leash, and he sucked it up in Melbourne. And if he sucks it up in Shanghai, Suzuka is going to be very, very interesting, because I believe Suzuka, Saudi, and Bahrain, once the first 5 races get into the books, and if he's still struggling, he's going to be out next thing you know by Miami. And maybe Colapinto gets in there, because they got, 1 million reserve drivers in Alpine? Realistically, it's really 5. But it seems like 1 million people, but Colapinto was going to be the guy at some point in time, but I expect it to be Miami. But there you go there, Norris, Piastri, and Verstappen in the podium. But the sprint race is Saturday, and it's going to be chaotic. The number 1 driver when it comes to sprint races is no other than Oscar Piastri, because tire management is not a topic. It really isn't a factor at all. So he's going to go out there, pedal to the metal, and will win this one by 3 seconds over Lando Norris, Kimi Antonelli, P3, Charles Leclerc, P4, Liam Lawson, P5, Max Verstappen, P6, P7, George Russell, and P8, Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton, I am a Hamilton fan. I'll be the first to tell you. I've watched sports my entire life. I watch football, baseball, NASCAR, Formula 1, and all these other sports, golf and basketball. Is it too early to have the conversation of Lewis Hamilton starting to get a little washed up? Bahrain testing wasn't too particularly hot. Australia weekend wasn't too particularly hot. Wasn't really competitive with Charles Leclerc, his teammate. Is that conversation right around the corner? I think it is. Hamilton is getting up there in age, and yes, he still has that fire inside, but that fire inside isn't enough to perform well on track. I hate to say it, but I believe it's the truth. Hamilton is starting to get a little washed up. What do you think about this all? Comment down below. Comment down below who you think is going to win the race. I think Norris, and I'm sure a lot of y'all will agree. But please like and subscribe.